It is my distinct honor at this time to introduce Josh Bleill, who is Indianapolis Colts community spokesman. Marine Corporal Josh Bleill, rhymes with Kyle, is a native of Greenfield, Indiana, Hoosier. After graduating high school, Josh attended Purdue University, and upon completion of his education, Josh decided to serve his country by joining the United States Marine Corps in 2004. He was activated for a tour of duty in Iraq in 2006. While serving in Iraq, Corporal Bleill was severely injured, resulting in the loss of both of his legs. After extensive rehabilitation, Bleill returned to Indiana in August of 2008, where he attacked his new life head-on. This new life included employment as the Indianapolis Colts community spokesperson. Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay has described Bleill as very talented, bright-eyed, and skilled. And now Josh travels the country to spread his message of hope one step at a time. Please welcome Josh.
That's all I got. Thanks. Semper Fi, absolutely, Devil Dogs. I'm thrilled to be here. I love this, absolutely love this. Just first of all, just thank you, and I'll get into that, but thank you for what you do. I'm blessed to have a job, very blessed to work for the Indianapolis Colts. And I like coming to other places, and I support the Indianapolis Colts stuff. But I literally, I've always wanted to wear this sweatshirt, and I was like, what better place? I was like, it's veteran related. I was like, it's Indianapolis Colts, that's who I work for. What I do there is, I'm classified as an Indianapolis Colts community spokesperson. A title that can be misleading because I made the title up. I made that title up 7 years ago. I needed business cards. So that's what I put on my title. But what I actually do is I do this. I do public events, I go to schools, I go to different corporations, I do public speaking. And I enjoy it. But where I've landed has been a blessing because of that job, because it's gotten me back a lot of things. So what you do for veterans out there is very meaningful to me because I know how important it is. I grew up with two wonderful, wonderful parents. I grew up with hardworking parents. My father was a school teacher in Indianapolis for 36 years. And then he just retired this past year. Now he bothers me a lot. But he's wonderful. Just a great inspiration to me. My mother was a hard worker. She worked for the American Red Cross, the director of our foundation for 18 years. Then she worked for the hospital foundation. And then she actually retired for the third time running the school foundation. So she was just an example to me of two people that just worked hard, and that's what they taught me. That's what you do in life. You work hard, you play hard, you enjoy the things you get to do. But they always taught me, to earn my keep and to go after the things I want. I've had a job probably since I've been about 16 years old. My first job ever, I worked as a stock boy in a Hooks drugstore. Hooks are no longer around, even in Indiana, they're not even around. But that's what I did, and so it was a good feeling. I was the baby boy of the family. I'm still the baby boy of the family. That doesn't change. That's still a wonderful thing. I have two older sisters, so I enjoy, watching them and all the things that they've done in this world. But I was just that typical Hoosier kid. Hoosier kids, I grew up on the farm. I grew up detasseling corn, baling hay, baling straw, just going after the things enjoying life, having fun, searching for kittens in the loft with your grandpa, that sort of thing. It was fun. But I was just taught right. I played basketball. Even through high school, I made the team and played basketball all 4 years. After high school, I got bigger in college. That's when I hit kind of my growth spurt. I went to Purdue University. I actually played lacrosse all 4 years there. Maybe 4.5, 5 years. It took me a while to get out of school, I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed it. I had made some decisions in my life that I wanted to go to Purdue. At that age, at 18 when I graduated high school, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I said, I'm going to go to Purdue University. I got into Purdue and I said, I might as well go for it. I might go to Purdue to be an engineer. So I got into engineering my first semester and quickly realized I was not supposed to be an engineer. I then switched. My mythology, everything changed. I said, I want to change the world. I want to help people. I want to do something better. I'm going to become a speech pathologist. So I switched to speech pathology. I was not supposed to be a speech pathologist. So I ended up in restaurant, hotel, institutional tourism. That's what I did. I enjoyed that. I found cooking classes. I studied different things, and I finished school. Then I got a job right out of college. First thing, it was a fabulous job. It wasn't in the restaurant, the hotel, even the institutional tourism part. Like we all realize that sometimes a degree, we go the opposite direction. I got a job at an insurance place, Conseco Insurance in Carmel, Indiana, Fortune 500 company. I was a corporate recruiter at age 22. I'm the youngest corporate recruiter in that company's history, and I was proud of that. I was proud to be there, to work hard, to do the best that I could. A month after I started at Conseco Insurance was in the year 2000. A month after I started, they filed bankruptcy. I can't ruin a company that fast. Like, I'm not putting that on me. Like, I'm not doing that. That's not what that's about by any means. But I knew it was going to be stressful, but I was surrounded by good support. I knew that I made a difference still at a company that was maybe failing or maybe coming out of it. So I just did the best that I could. That's how I was raised, to work hard. So every day I would get up, I would put a smile on, I'd go to work with the best intentions. I was honest to people, I was respectful to people because I knew I affected them. I was a corporate recruiter. This is what I did. I hired people. And I remember going through thousands upon thousands of resumes every single day, looking at things, and you compare. And back then I was ignorant. Back then I didn't understand the correlation of the servicemen and women and all the functions that they did, the dedication. Because I was taught, you look for that college education. That's the first thing, the curriculum, you have to hit this. Being later in life and seeing down the road, I probably missed out on a lot of good people. I always knew that was a respectful thing, but I kind of notched college education just a little bit ahead. Because what did that take? That took dedication, right? That took all the things we described. That takes a commitment. You have to do that. You have to go to class. I was in college for 5 years, and I look at my service time and my college years. I did a lot better in my service time than my college years. By far, proved a lot more. But one particular day, I was driving to work, good attitude, smile on my face, received a phone call, answered the phone, and she said, hey, it was a friend of mine. She said, you need to turn on the radio. So I turned on the radio and heard the events of 9/11 starting to take place. I quickly drove into work. We found the television, turned it on, and watched those horrific events of that day unfold. That was something that we all know changed everything. Changed how we do things, changed the security, changed a lot in this world. But something inside of me was stirring. Something inside of me was telling me there's something you can do. You're a big kid physically. You know you can serve in the military. Mentally, I believed it. My father had been an F-4 pilot in the Marine Corps. My grandfather had served in Northern Africa in World War II. My grandfather had 4 brothers. All 5 of them were deployed at the exact same time in World War II. 4 of them were shot and injured. Thankfully, they all survived. My grandfather was shot while fighting in the left arm. He said he remembers going down on the battlefield. One of his own men picked him up, put him over his shoulder, and carried him to safety. He said when he awoke from his injuries, he heard Amazing Grace being played on the bagpipes. And he thought he was in heaven. He said, then I heard my sergeant's voice. There was no way that man had made it to heaven. These are kind of the stories that I grew up with. So I was like, this is something that I could do. This is something that I believe in doing. It's been in my family, but it's been in this country, the traditions, that why I had got to live so free. My father always said to me, you know what? He had joined the Marine Corps, so later on his family didn't feel like they had to. And I thought the same thing. I can do it. I want to do the same thing. I want to support. Why not me? If I wasn't going, somebody else would fill those shoes. So I decided, I prayed about it. Finally, I talked to some friends, and in 2003, I walked into that recruiting station. I signed the paperwork. I said, this is what I want to do. I said, I signed up for the United States Marine Corps. I was going to follow my family's traditions and this country's traditions, and I was proud of that. I was excited for it. About 3 weeks after I made that commitment, I remember calling my sister and explaining to her my decision and why I had done this. And I knew she was proud. She cried and stuff. And she's like, what did Mom and Dad say? I was like, well, I should probably tell Mom and Dad. That's what I did. So late one night, about a month after joining the Marine Corps, not yet going to boot camp, I called my father outside. And I could tell in his eyes he knew something was serious that was about to take place. But I explained to him that these are the reasons why I'd done this. I wanted to join. I had always looked up to his service. And I knew he was proud of that. I knew he was scared about it. But he opened his mouth and he said to me, "Your mother is going to kill you." We brought Mom outside. We explained. She cried. But I have such supportive parents. And it was just that family that I was thankful to have. And about a year later, I was sent to boot camp. In 2004, at the age of 27, I was sent to boot camp. And you realize upon standing on those yellow footprints that first night and looking around you as much as you can, you're probably a little old to be at boot camp. They were all 17 and 18 years old. I was 10 years older than some of these guys. And I thought, there is no way we can make this work. There's unbelievable. Such a 10-year gap is a huge thing. I thought, how are we going to make this work? I realized a couple things. One, these young men, at 17 and 18 years old, had made that same commitment, that same willingness to put their lives on the line, to risk time away from family, friends, and I had to honor that. I had to honor that decision. A lot at that join actually joined because of 9/11, so it was honorable. I also realized that these guys were going to be responsible for my life. We had to figure this out. We had to kind of make it work. You got to figure out the people you work with, the people that you go see every day, your family members, they're all responsible for parts of your life. So you have to figure out, even if there are differences, age differences, work differences, anything that you do, you make better relationships. It helps you in the overall goal. Your goal is to help veterans find jobs. I was becoming one of those veterans. 13 weeks. Marine Corps boot camp is known for the grueliness, how miserable it is. We all know why. Drill instructors. Horrible, horrible people in this world. They're so mean. For 13 weeks, these guys were in my face, and they knew that I was older. They absolutely did. My second week there, they made me a fire team leader, and anytime those guys got in trouble, I got punished. All hours of the night, all hours of the day, they punished me for what these young guys were doing. And I just thought, this is unreal. I don't know if I can handle this. And I was a fire team leader for 12 of those 13 weeks dealing with this. But I became a Marine. And I was proud of that day. I remember that, everybody was just there and dressed to the T. My family was sitting in the bleachers. I could see my mom and dad out in the crowd waiting for them finally to dismiss us, and I just stood there. So excited. Finally they dismissed us, and I saw my mom and dad. They came down out of the bleachers. They got closer and closer, and I could feel just that lump in my throat. I could see my mom's tears. And they were about to me. My mom almost was about to me. And then she just kept walking past me. Because we all look exactly alike. The big guys become little guys, the little guys become big guys. Everybody, same haircut, same uniform. I was like, Mom. It took away a little bit from that moment. I'm not going to lie. But then we connected. They gave me big hugs and everything. And it was fabulous. It really was. But then I came home. I went back to Indianapolis. And I got 10 days at home before I went back. Because I had joined the infantry. That's what I knew I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a frontline guy. I knew I wanted to go. So I went back for 9 more weeks at infantry school, because we learned a lot more about tactics of war, what we're going to do over there, the hardships. We push our bodies and minds physically, mentally to the limit. But that's why we do it. We enjoy it. We love the camaraderie. We push each other. We lift each other up. That's the part of this brother and sisterhood. And then I went back to Indiana as a reservist. So I was a weekend Marine. So I did a week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. I went back to my job at the insurance business. I then switched over to manage a call center for a while at the same insurance business. We were actually bringing the company out of bankruptcy. So we were doing back and things. So I was stressed out. I got to deal with angry customers on a daily basis. And I know we all deal with angry people on the telephone and thing. And it's hard to deal when someone else is yelling at you, sometimes for something outside of your control. No one ever called into an insurance business to tell them thank you. Ever. No one just called and said, you know what, you're doing a great job. Thanks for everything you did. No, I never received that phone call. I dealt with angry people, but I was just calm, collective, respectful. That gets far in this world. Getting my emotions involved didn't help. My only emotion I had was to do my best for them. One of the phone calls that I received, a gentleman called me. He was angry. He got mad at my employee, so I ended up getting the call. Talk to this man. And he said, you know what? He said, I went to West Point. He was an older gentleman. I was like, well, sir, I'm in the Marine Corps. He's like, good, you can help me then. You're a Marine, I'll trust that. And I was like, all right, connection right there. Calmed him down just a little bit. And he wanted to change something on his policy. And I said, well, sir, you had to wait a certain amount of time. So it was about 6 months down the road. He said, all right, you're going to call me in 6 months on that date. And I said, absolutely, I will. Absolutely. I'll mark it on my calendar. I will make it, and you can call me directly, and we'll change it on your policy. No big deal. 5 months and 29 days later, I got a voicemail from him yelling at me, berating me, telling me that I was a Marine, that I should be held to higher standards. That why didn't I call him? I promised to do this. Now 5 months and 30 days, the next day, actually 6 months, which was on my calendar to call this man, the date we had agreed on, he called back and sincerely apologized that he had written down the wrong date. I was like, are you serious? But you can't get mad. You can't get angry. You can't bring that into it. Even when somebody else is at fault, it doesn't do you any good to come up to that emotional level at all. So I was doing this back and forth, stressed out about that, stressed out about the Marine Corps, but enjoying it until late one night. January of 2006, I was sitting at my girlfriend's house. We were playing cards just in the garage with some neighbor friends, enjoying our lives, and my phone rang. I saw it was my sergeant, so I excused myself. We talked quite a bit, walked into the kitchen and said, hey, Sergeant, what's going on? He said, Bleill, it's time. We've been activated. We're going to head over. Now, he knew what that meant to me. He knew that's the reason I had signed up, the reason I had joined. I wanted to go. He also knew there were other emotions tied to it. There was nervousness. There was going to be excitement. There was going to be a lot of things going on. He said, Bleill, before you go through any of these emotions, he said, know when you walk back out there, see your girlfriend, when you see your friends, your family, there's emotions tied to it for them as well. Let them have it. He said, just deal with the things. Absolutely have the conversations. But I just tell you this, enjoy. Enjoy the time we've been blessed with here. So that's what we did. For the next couple months, we enjoyed our time. That's how I was raised. Still went to work, still worked hard, still played hard. We had a lot of laughs. We had some tears, absolutely. But we got through it. And then we get back to training. Marines get back at it, just like you guys prepare for what you're about to face. We prepare for the worst, because we want to be prepared if we see that. We train, as a lot of people know, out in California, in the Mojave Desert, in mock cities. So we have city blocks that we train in, these huge complexes. We're training doing what Marines do. We're kicking open doors. We're training if someone takes gunfire, if someone takes an explosion, what to do. A lot of things have changed. A lot of reasons why so many veterans are coming back injured is because we're surviving. It's because the medical advancements are helping so much that we are coming back, unlike some wars that we wouldn't have survived. But we also train with 150 Iraqi citizens. We know, even in war, it's a relationship. You get farther with having common goals, having friends over there, trying to do the right things. And finally, in September of 2006, I got sent to the city of Fallujah. Bad spot. Absolutely bad spot. We were sent there. There's 200 of us Marines that lived in the city at the CMOT. So we had a small fortified base. But basically, we're doing what Marines do. We're going out. We're going after specific targets. So we're kicking open doors at 3, 4 in the morning. And I remember my first out. 3 in the morning, it was like our second night there. In the middle of the night, we're going out in the streets of Fallujah, looking for specific people. We had a route that we were going, so we're planning our routes on our maps. We're preparing, we're getting out there. I was a fire team leader, so I had 3 other guys responsible for them. As we're walking down the streets at 3, 4 in the morning, it's nerve-wracking. Absolutely, it's nerve-wracking. I live out in the country now, out in Indiana. Even if I go out in my own house at 3, 4 in the morning, it's a little nerve-wracking. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big baby sometimes. I have a huge Rottweiler, and he is scared of the dark. I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up. My dog is scared of the dark, so he makes it worse because he'll go out there and act like he sees things. Like, just go to the bathroom and come back. You're scaring me. Sometimes I just lock the door and look out there. Like, I'm a big baby. So being in Fallujah is a different world, but we're big tough Marines. That's what we're trained to do. We've gone through the training. We're prepared this. We get our bodies, our minds ready to do this. But we don't walk next to each other. When we're out scouting, we're out going somewhere, what we do is we space out. So my 3 other guys are spaced out from me, 15, 20 yards apart. We do this because if I take fire, if I trip a mine, I don't want them getting hit by any means. And I tell you what, that very first night, we're walking down the streets of Fallujah. I get to the corner of a building, and I still remember this. I was pulling out my map, And I went back to signal to my guys that we're going to hold up for a minute. And when I turned back to give him a signal, I ran smack dab into my gunner. I mean, just face to face with him. And he looks me right in the eyes and he says, "Man, it is scary out here." And as much as I knew we weren't where we were supposed to be, I was so glad he felt that way. Sometimes in this world, no matter what we do, we have the same emotions. You have the same emotions as everybody in this room. We've all gone through good points. We've all gone through bad points. When we don't talk about some of the stressful times, some of the bad things, then it just gets pushed to the side and we continue to have those. When you bring those out just because you're scared, because I was nervous to say that I was scared in Fallujah, where I was being hunted by somebody else, someone was trying to take my life and my Marine lives, it's a normal emotion. When you talk about it, we get through it. It's the same in this world. When you talk about the things, the difficulties, sometimes things that aren't working, the emotions, everybody has it. Trust me. If you think those days where you are just stressed out in your car, where you're just yelling at anybody that gets halfway near you, that didn't speed up fast enough, didn't turn fast enough, and you're thinking, why am I doing this? Work is stressful, this is ill. Everybody's been there. Everybody. It's about getting through that. And that's what we were doing, even in Fallujah, going down. That day, I remember kicking open that first door. I got to breach, and I went in first. And I remember there's a group of women out on the porch sleeping. And I remember I was to head straight up. I went up the stairs with another Marine, and they split off. We had called out the group. We didn't find anything. A lot of times, we didn't find anything. Sometimes we did. Sometimes we got who we were looking for. A lot of times, it was just a family. Dad, kids, mom woken up in the middle of the night, scared that we were in their house. But the hardest part was always seeing the father, because he'd say one word to us. He'd say teftish. In Arabic, teftish means search. They knew why we were there. Absolutely they did. Because they've lived in this lifestyle for 50, 60 years. And it's hard to see anybody else live like that. You have emotions for that, but I knew that's the reason. We had to be open. Absolutely. But on October 15th, of 2006, I was in a Humvee. That day we were chasing down vehicles. So we had specific targets, again, we were looking for that were traveling by vehicles. We were looking for VBIDs, the IEDs and everything, and we'd pull these guys over. We'd surround them with our Humvees, we'd yank them out, we'd send them off to jail, and do this one after the other, after the other. After a particular stop, I loaded back up. When the guys got back into our Humvee, we had to do a quick U-turn over the median just to go reset, meet up with the two other Humvees. As we turned over the median, that's when the bomb was set off. My world went black. I was instantly knocked out. My big bulletproof vest, my big sappy plate that I wore, came up from the explosion and broke my jaw, and I was out. Those other guys in the other two Humvees, those 17 and 18-year-old kids that I once doubted, that are now 19, 20 years old, they went in. They got me out. They tourniqueted both my legs. They put me in the back of a medevac truck, got there very quickly. They had put 2 tourniquets on both of my legs, and they still realized I was probably going to bleed out. So they quickly got me out of that. They put me into a Humvee and just hauled out of there. They got me to Camp Fallujah within about 35 minutes. I owe my life to those young men and the heroics that they did. But I woke up 5 days later. At this point, I woke up in Landstuhl, Germany. No recollection of the day. I can remember preparing the routes. Last thing I knew, I was in a war zone, going after guys. And then it was black. But the thing I could remember is I had fellow Marines in that vehicle. My brothers were in that vehicle. And as I looked around that room, couldn't find them. Well, luckily, my gunner had survived. He had lost his right leg, but he had made his way to me in the hospital just so he could prove that I was alive, because we weren't sure who had made it. And he found me and he told me the hardest part, that we lost 2 of my guys. My sergeant had been killed directly in front of me, and my roommate and one of my closest friends was killed directly next to me. My gunner, thankfully, like I said, did survive, and he's doing well. My driver, who was in the same explosion, the same vehicle, wasn't touched. He didn't have a single scratch on him. He actually finished the tour. I'm very thankful for that. Then they had to explain all this. What else had happened to me? The extent of my injuries. As you can see and you heard, I lost both of my legs above the knee. I have 27 pins in my right hip. I broke my pelvis in half, so there's a 6-inch screw holding it together. I broke my nose, my jaw, both my wrists, 4 fingers. They classified me with post-traumatic stress disorder and severe traumatic brain injury. Now my father tells everyone, his brain was like that before. There was no concern at all about my brain. But I was hurt. I was scared. I didn't understand it. I was angry that my friends were taking place. Sometimes when they're in the same thing, I was in a vehicle. There's 5 of us. 1 lost a leg. Me, 2 legs. 1 guy wasn't touched, and then we lost 2 guys. Sometimes when you're in the exact same situation as somebody else, the exact same position, the exact same job, it affects you differently. Absolutely affects you differently. But it's still that teamwork. It's still how you bring it. So we do have those emotions, but at the same time, we have different stories. We have different lives, different things going on. And I was angry about what happened. I bottled up that anger. I was sent back here to the United States, to Bethesda Naval Hospital. Wonderful care, wonderful people, but the support that I received is amazing now, and I'm thankful. Thankful for the generations that went before me that made sure that we're taken care of. I'm very thankful for that. And we are. But I knew. I was now 29 years old. I knew I was different. For the first time in my life, this big Marine, this big tough lacrosse player was scared to go into public. I couldn't handle it. I remember the very first day I met my new sergeant, though, my new Marine Corps sergeant. I was still in my bed, and he walked into my hospital room. My mother and father had gathered in the corner. I remember my dad had his hands on my mom's shoulder standing behind her. And I can still see the tears coming down my mom's face. And the sergeant looked over at both of them, and he gave them a quick nod. They nodded back. Then he walked over to my bedside. And I laid there, still, with soot covering my face, still hadn't been cleaned up all the way. You know what? I had casts on both my wrists. I had a trach in my neck just so I could breathe. There was wires coming out of both legs. And he looks down at me, and he says, "Bleill, that is not a regulation haircut, and you need to shave your face." I thought my mom was going to kill this man if I ever made it all. And it was crazy to me back then. It's still a little crazy just saying it out loud. It does sound crazy. It absolutely, at the time I was thinking, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do to me at this point? Are you going to kick me out? Am I not in that anymore? What he was doing back then, though, is he was setting an expectation. I was a Marine. I was still alive. I was blessed. And he was going to hold me to be 100% of the man that I was supposed to be. And I'm thankful because he pushed me every single day to be better and better, to reach what I could reach. And it was great. I was still a Marine, but like I said, I knew something was different. I just didn't want to leave. And I remember we always had formation still, every morning. Marines still have formation. And it was the saddest looking formation you've ever seen. We laughed all the time because we did. I would go out there in my wheelchair, and we are goofy, we are not PC, we're still Marines. Just because we've been hurt, we are still Marines, we're still young kids being silly. And every morning we'd line up formation, and someone would always say when I first got hurt and was in a wheelchair without my prosthetics, they'd say, "Bleill doesn't have his boots on." And we were just crying. Sergeant became so tired of that line that we kept doing it. We had fun, we did. But I just didn't leave. And there's great things that support us. They send us on trips. Organizations out there that do great for our veterans, absolutely. They send us on horseback riding adventures, scuba diving, things that they know we're athletic. They just are trying to get us back out there. And I knew that. I was old enough to know that, and I became very notorious for not going. I didn't want to go. I wasn't going to be forced to be out of that hospital. I started recovering, started doing my physical therapy, but I was never leaving. Till one day my sergeant, who never gave up, like I said, pushed me daily, he came up to me. He said, "Bleill, I have another opportunity for you like I do always, but this one, I don't think you can pass up." I said, "Out of respect, Sergeant, you know me, I will listen to you." I've continuously said no. He said, "Bleill, how would you like to go see the Indianapolis Colts play the Chicago Bears in the Super Bowl?" It might be all right, Sergeant. He knew without a doubt. He knew I was an indie kid. He knew that was my hometown. He knew he had me. He just had something. I would have gone to any Super Bowl. Obviously, any Super Bowl. It doesn't matter to me. It's a Super Bowl. Absolutely. But I was like, this is something I cannot pass up. It's the first time I left that hospital. We went down to Miami. They took 19 of us injured guys. We went down there, watched the Super Bowl. Amazing. Unbelievable. We sat in the pouring rain and loved every minute of it. It was fabulous. We were very fortunate Indianapolis brought home that championship, so it was even more special to me. But that night, it became apparent that I was still a Marine. Because we got to fly down to the Super Bowl. We had our own plane. It was unbelievable. We had a police escort to the game. Had beautiful seats at the Super Bowl. It was unreal. And that night, we didn't stay at a 5-star hotel, and that's all right. We didn't stay at a 4-star hotel. We didn't even stay at a hotel. As true Marines, we slept in the Marine Corps barracks. And us 20 injured guys who all had prosthetics and different things, I tell you what, we slept on cots. We slept with those big old wool horse blankets that you sleep with. But the funniest thing throughout the night was the cots continued to break. And so you'd hear someone go, ugh. And then you'd hear them say, can you hear me, my leg? And we sat there just with tears in our eyes because all night this happened. And we were all, you could just hear us laughing. And you would think if anybody walked into that room and saw these guys that were hurt, that lost legs, it would look like a horrible sight. It really, a very devastating thing had happened in this room. But we were having the times of our lives. And I knew that's what being a veteran was about. About doing things that aren't always conventional, that aren't always the easy route, but enjoying it and doing it and giving it my best. But I also realized that at that game, I was in front of tens of thousands of people for the first time. And I knew it wasn't about being in a wheelchair. It wasn't about what I looked like. My parents had raised me better than that. They taught me, like I said, to work hard, to go what you want after in this life, to do everything you can to achieve your dreams. So I was kind of transformed. I said, I got a new attitude. I was sent then to Walter Reed Medical Hospital in Washington, D.C. And I was at Walter Reed when the news stories came out, when they said we lived in unfair conditions, when we didn't have the right things. I was there. I remember the news article came out. We started getting all this media, people interviewing us. I never experienced any of that. I had the best care, the best doctors, great place to live. And I say that because of the people who worked there and did so much for us. That day, though, it was kind of entertaining to us because we got back to the Malone House, the hotel where we stayed, and we got into the hallways, and there were a bunch of TV boxes and computer boxes. We got bigger TVs and computers out of that whole deal, so thanks for that. I don't know what that means. But yeah, it was great. I was there, though, to learn to walk, to be able to do this, to get prosthetic legs. And I tell you what, every day that I went into physical therapy and occupational therapy, I was surrounded by men and women who had lost limbs, had lost their friends, had done what we've done for this country. But they were the happiest bunch, the greatest group, because they knew they were blessed to be alive. Absolutely knew that they enjoyed their service, that that was a price. But they got to come home. And I knew that too, that I got to come home. And so I pushed harder and harder to get my body back into shape. But the day finally arrived when I got prosthetics. It was a good day because I remember my family was there. I spent 6 months in a wheelchair just because of my pelvic injuries and hip injuries had to heal before I could even try to stand. And I remember they came in. I was sitting there just in anticipation, waiting for them to bring out the 2 prosthetic legs. When they brought out the legs, they aren't actually these legs I currently wear. They brought out the 2 shortest little legs you've ever seen in your life. If I was behind that podium, you would not see me wearing those legs. I was like, come on, I wanted the tall legs. Sometimes in life, we think if we had more resources, more money, more employees, more technology, that we would do better. That plays the fact that, you know what, we can only give 100%. So you know what, when we start blaming other things, and I was blaming those little legs, so I wasn't going to do good because of this. I said, I can't do that. I can still give 100%. I can still try my hardest. That's what we do. There are other things that we have to consider, but it's how we still look at ourselves. It's how much work ethic that we're giving, how much attitude that we're trying to have. And I said, I'll do it. I'll take these little legs. I'll just go as hard as I can go. As I stood there, I hadn't doubted I could do it. I'd seen other women learn to walk. But I remember thinking, I don't know how to lift this leg up. I didn't have enough strength. I couldn't physically get my foot to take that first step. I allowed that anger to come back in? Absolutely I did. I sat down, I took the legs off, and I rushed out of that hospital to hide once again from this one. When I got back though, I just found a lot of support, a lot of letters, a lot of phone calls from guys in my unit that were getting back, that were coming to visit me. Guys I'd seen battles that had survived, that they had done their duties as well. Just tell me, Josh, to keep going. This is why we do it. And that brotherhood and sisterhood never stopped. I got calls from the guys that had been in physical therapy room that day, that they were going through their own battles, but had seen that I was struggling, and lifted me back up and said, you got to keep coming back. So I went back. I went back the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And it took me 5 days before I just took that first little step. It was a good step. I was realizing, you know what, I can go for it. Absolutely, I can learn to do this. And it was hard, getting your shape. You have to learn to do everything. From just walking on the little legs, then they move you up. And I tell people it's like walking on stilts and then putting roller skates on those stilts. It's all about balance. It really is. Little movements, it can throw you. But that's part of it. You got to learn to do that too. You got to learn to fall. You got to learn to stand back up. The first day I fell, I remember thinking, well, I'll just stand back up. But I didn't have the strength. I didn't understand where to put my legs, where to put my hands. It wasn't just like standing back up with legs. But I remember that's when I was surrounded by those guys and gals that had done it. They walked over and said, you know what? Just lean on one side. Put your knee down here. Push up here. Kind of get into a triangle and stand back up. That's how I learned. That's how I got better. From veterans. From guys, like I said, and gals that were going through hard times, but still took that time to take care of each other. That's what this room does. You take care of us. You watch over them. Even with the things that are going on in your own lives at work, and everything that we do is still about helping one another, helping our veterans get out. And I tell you what, that moment for me, when that excitement came when I got to meet the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of teams stopped by Walter Reed. A lot of people stopped by Walter Reed. We were thankful for the politicians, the celebrities, always coming in to say thank you to the men and women who had served. And I remember when the Indianapolis Colts came, I got to meet Peyton Manning, Joseph Adai, Dallas Clark, the guys who had won that Super Bowl. And I was excited. I was thrilled. I talked to them all. I was just like a little kid again. But I sat down with Joseph Adai. He's our running back for a real long time. We just talked back and forth. Joseph's good friend's paralyzed from a football incident when they were kids. So he understood some of the physical and mental dilemmas I was looking at. So we were just talking, two people talking. And I remember thinking, this is my mom. She calls wish me luck. She's so silly. I'm just kidding. I've done it like, I speak all the time and my phone is usually the one that goes off and I get laughing so I'm like, I'm so sorry. So I have that joke in my pocket for that exact thing. That's the only reason I have that joke, because my phone's done it a million times. That's part of it. You're working. You got things going on. Family. That's part of life, everybody. That's okay. We're good with that. I sat down with their Joseph, and I was a football fan, so I asked him a lot of football questions too, I'm not going to lie. But I asked Joseph one question. And I know where I am in this country, and I know a lot of you guys are from all over, so there's different NFL support in this area. Absolutely. Virginia, I know. I know who you support. A lot of Washington Redskins. They still have that team, right? I'm kidding. But Joseph had actually scored the winning touchdown against New England to get him into that Super Bowl. And I asked him about that moment in his life. I said, Joseph, when you scored that touchdown and you knew that you had just put your team ahead to get you guys into the Super Bowl, like what's going through your head? Joe is a very quiet, humble guy. He thinks for a second. Finally, he looks up at me and says, I was thinking, man, I'm tired. And now we got to play another game. That's not the response I wanted. Absolutely not at all. By any means. I was saying, greatest moment of my life. We're going to the Super Bowl. Like, this is awesomeness. Sometimes, even in the wonderful things, even in the successes in your life, there's still other worries going on. There's still like, all right, we just did this. We've just started this new organization. We've teamed up. I've just added a lot of work. Like, that's the first thing that we think of. I'm tired. I'm still stressed out. It's how you get past that and continue to focus on the good things and understand the teamwork that get you championships, that make you better. End result, get veterans jobs. Bottom line, veterans jobs. Yeah, it adds things. Yeah, when you take on more responsibility, it takes on more stress, absolutely, but it affects more veterans. It gets more veterans jobs. It continues the cycle. So your work does pay off, absolutely, tenfold. So I'm thankful for that. Then I met the owner of the Colts, Mr. Jim Irsay. Irsay and I had actually gone to the same gym a long time ago. So when I was injured, one of my friends at the gym told him that I got hurt. And so he knew I was at Walter Reed Recovery. And so he sought me out at the hospital. And he said, Josh, I know you're an Indianapolis kid. I want to make you two promises. One, whenever you fly back to Indy, I'll fly you home. And two, when you get there, you come see me about a job. Those words to me were unreal because I was different, and I knew that. Physically, mentally, I was different, and I had no idea what I was going to do for a living. Absolutely. And I could have stayed in the Marine Corps, yeah. I didn't want to do that. I was an infantry guy. I wanted to do something else, but I didn't know. I had no clue. What was I able to do? But that promise, that just little hope, glimmer of having a job again, to be able to work, was huge. It gave me a chance to work hard. But I spent 10 months in that hospital. I'd overcome the hardest thing. I'd learned to walk again, and I was getting better. But I hadn't visited Indianapolis yet. I hadn't gone home, because I'd set goals. One of my goals was I would not go home until I could physically walk off that plane. I was there, and I knew that. So finally I decided, all right, it's time for me to go visit. And so I'll go visit home, see some friends, family I hadn't seen yet, and I scheduled a flight. As soon as I did that, I had issues. I'd take a few steps and it hurt. It didn't hurt before to walk. So I didn't understand what was going on in the fittings. They tried a different fittings, different things. And finally, about 2 weeks after just being stubborn about it, I said, I gotta go. I gotta go to the doctors. And I went. And they ran tests. They ran scans, x-rays. And they came out and they said, Josh, unfortunately, we found 2 infections. We're gonna have to amputate again. 10 months of blood, sweat, and tears, overcoming a lot of anger, understanding that life was bigger, possibly maybe having a job when I went back to Indy. Said, you're not going home yet. So I had to have surgery again. Had to have my legs re-amputated. The infections cut out on both legs. Had to be back in that wheelchair again. Scars, let them heal for 3 more months, and then try to learn to walk again. It's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of patience. But I tell you what, every single day that I got up, I had that formation. That I was still a Marine. That I was still destined to be as best as I could be. And I had the support of those men and women next to me. I even had seen horrible things. And I had good people that continued to go. I had a good family, good faith. I said, all right. So I worked even harder. Learned to walk again. Got back out there, got my body back into shape after all the surgeries, and kept going forward. And I spent 22 months in that hospital. 2 years of my life recovering. 3 times longer than that deployment would have been. And after 22 months, I went home to Indiana, born and raised. Like I said, I was adamant about getting a job. I'd worked my whole life. That's all I knew. And so I wanted to keep working. I wanted to keep going forward. So I called the Indianapolis Colts, honestly just hoping that they remember that promise Mr. Irsay had kind of told me. I kind of had an insurance policy on that, I'm not going to lie. When I was out at Walter Reed, one of the media guys there came to me and asked me to do a radio interview, so I did it for a local radio station. It was easy. And about 2 weeks later, he came to me, and the news had stopped by because they were talking a lot about Walter Reed, and I said I would do that interview, so I did that one as well. And things continued to happen, so every couple of weeks he'd come to me with new opportunities. So I had amazing things because of out there. They did a 60-minute special on some legs that I was wearing in me. I was on the Stephen Colbert Report. I did a video for the Oprah Show one time. Just all these things. But at the end of every interview I did out there, I always said, and I would like to work for the Indianapolis Colts. That's a shameless plug. I don't care. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And they had remembered it. They had been great too. And so they called me. And they said, Josh, now that you're back home, come on in for an interview. And I interviewed with Pete Ward. He's a COO in Indianapolis Colts. Tom Zupancic, he was our Senior Vice President of Marketing. He now works for Deem, another corporation that sponsors what I do. They said, Josh, we like you. I know you've been through the hard work. We talked back and forth, went through a lot of different things. I said, it's amazing. We're thankful for you. We want you to come work here. We want to honor that promise Mr. Jim Irsay made you. It was a dream state. Not only, working for the NFL was amazing. Indianapolis Colts, that's a dream job for your hometown to work in that league. It's just unbelievable. So all those just fireworks, everything's going off in my head. But at the same time, almost that lump came back because I was going to work. I was going to have a job. I was going to be able to support myself. I was going to go back out there. I was so excited. And Tom, I remember him looking at me, and I was just trying to hold back just the feelings. He said, we want you to do public speaking. And I blurted out, I hate public speaking. This is not what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do there, but I didn't want to do this. My biggest fear when I got injured was that people were going to stare. People were going to look at me. And this is what they wanted me to do for a living. But it was a job. It was absolutely a job. And I said, I got to figure it out. If you're offering me this, you know what? I got to step outside my comfort zones. I got to try something new. I do. And I said, all right. I got to figure it out. I'll do it. I'll take it. And at that time, my wife was a 3rd grade school teacher. So I got the brilliant idea to first practice speaking to third graders. They're very critical of that. But I love how they see this world. Absolutely I do. One of my first classrooms is about 20 third graders, and I walked in and I was nervous. But from the moment I walked in, there was a little guy up front that had his hand up. Like from the moment I walked in, just... And I'm smart enough to know not to call him that. So I talked the whole time. And then finally got done talking and started letting him ask questions. He was so polite, but just still. Like the whole time. Finally, I was like, all right, I can't take it anymore. I was like, little man, what you got for me? He put his hand down. He stood up. I mean, just grinning ear to ear. Put his hands on his side. He looked right at me and said, do you wear socks? He had waited that whole time to ask that question. Oh, and as funny as I thought that was, it was even funnier. I had to answer him because I said, I do, but I have no idea why. The third grader noticed that I wore socks. And I don't know why I wear socks. I don't need to wear socks. Sometimes it's good to get a different perspective. It really is. Sometimes it makes you think a little bit more. This room is full of different perspectives. Absolutely. Now we can hold those in and be great at our job, and that's good. Or you can talk about it in this room and make connections and network with another and talk about different perspectives. And I tell you what, it helps. Absolutely do. I was an HR recruiter, and I went to a lot of HR conferences. That's what we did. Absolutely. And there's a lot of things that people said and just metaphors and everything, and I always blended together sometimes for me. But the one, I was always like, if I ever, and I don't know why, I was like, if I ever do this, I'm not going to use that metaphor in this. I was like, I'm not going to take anything away from this. I did. I learned stuff, absolutely. But the one thing I did was about perspective. And my biggest thing when I was at HR conferences, if they ever asked for audience participation, I was like, that's not why I'm using, we have you here. I'm not going to participate. Like I was just so, as adults, I don't know why we're so scared of that. I'm going to ask you to participate. No names. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to look at each other. All you have to do is one little exercise. You don't even have to stand up. It's super easy. We can do this. Third graders would do it. You can do it. If you take your finger and just look down at your finger. We don't have to look at each other. Just look down at your finger and move that finger in a circle in a clockwise position. Very good. Clockwise. Doing good. Now slowly raise it up as you keep spinning it. Keep slowing it raise until you get about to your face. Continue up until it's just above your head. And look at that circle. Which direction is it going? Counterclockwise? Anything change? Just perspective, right? You would swear, I told you to go clockwise with that circle. And you would swear that circle is going clockwise. Absolutely. As you raise it up in perspective change, you're going counterclockwise. Sometimes in life, even if we're certain, absolutely certain, I'm 100% right, this is exactly, I know for a fact that this is clockwise. You change that perspective, you're wrong. We're wrong sometimes. Even when we think, I'm wrong. A lot of times. My wife lets me know. A lot of times. You have to look outside. You have to look at the other shoes. Even when you're trying to get veterans jobs, even when you're saying that some of the things that I talk about, I had wonderful experiences. Absolutely. When I got back, sometimes though, veterans are overwhelmed. They don't respond the same way. And sometimes even when you're trying to help them, they don't see it. And they don't respond how you think they should respond. Absolutely not. I've called you, I've left you messages, I've done this for you. You know what? You should have done this by now. I would have taken it up on you. Put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes they're going through a lot. I went through a lot. The guys and gals, anybody that went over there, anybody that did, has labeled, not labeled, but they have the PTSD. And we talk about that. And I know that sometimes, even as a recruiter back in the day, PTSD for employees is a scary term. It is. What part of your job is eliminating that term. Eliminating that, you know what, anybody can have that. My PTSD, I'm labeled as PTSD. When I got that phone call, I'm labeled as severe TBI, severe traumatic brain injury. If you looked at me on paper, it would scare the dickens out of an employee. Absolutely. With my physical limitations, with my severe TBI, with PTSD, it would scare. What we have to take away is showing the veterans of what they did, of who they are. And yeah, it changes for individuals. Absolutely. But it's about eliminating some of those terms and explaining A lot of the problems that sometimes we have is just the ignorance. I'm ignorant to things. I gotta learn more things. PTSD, here are my symptoms. Yeah, when I go to a restaurant, sometimes I sit on the far corner because I check security. Most Marines, most sailors, most guys still do that. We're aware. Sometimes we assume the worst. Sometimes we think if a guy has a trench coat on, you know what, he probably has a gun and I'm going to keep my eye on that guy. That's PTSD. It's always assuming sometimes the worst. Some of those little things. I have nightmares about once a month for 3 days straight. But other than that, you know what? Those are the things I got classified with because I took a test. Because of what I did over there, because of the answers that I revealed, that's what they labeled me as. That'll always be labeled that way. Should I not have a job because of that? Should someone not give me a chance because of that? Because I have a severe TBI? I'm thankful that someone took a chance on me. Indianapolis Colts took a chance on me. I'm very thankful that I have this job. I love this job. Absolutely love it. I travel all over the country, and get to do this for a living. I get to be back out there, and it's therapeutic for me to tell my story. It's therapeutic for me, to be back in the world, back in society. Yeah, absolutely looking different. What I do now reminds me of a job I did in college. Something I never told the Marine Corps that I did. Like I said, I was in restaurant, hotel, institutional tourism. I laugh at the institutional tourism. They finally dropped that at Purdue University. They don't call it that anymore. Yeah. I did an internship. I did an internship at Walt Disney World. You don't tell the Marine Corps. You worked at Walt Disney World. But they're known for that. They're known for the restaurants, for their hotels. Absolutely they are. I didn't work in the restaurants or the hotels. I did the institutional tourism part. I drove Kilimanjaro safaris in Animal Kingdom for 6 months of my life. Yeah, it was awesome. It really was. It was so much fun. 2,000 college students, and I drove a safari truck every single day. Gave tours, had this whole spiel, talked about the animals, drove a big truck. That whole spiel that I said back then, it's still stuck in my head. So I apologize for what's about to happen. Care Mooney, everyone, welcome aboard. Slide on over and make yourselves comfortable. My name is Joshua, wildlife driver here in Harambe Wildlife Reserve. Jambo. Jambo means hello here in Swahili. So Jambo, everyone. Jambo. That's stupid, isn't it? Yeah, I know the whole thing. I'm not kidding. I tell you that story because I did that job 16 years ago for 6 months of my life. And I still know. So there's no doubt in my mind, the experience in this room. You guys probably know your job. Probably know it pretty well. But even new, been there for 6 months. That's as long as I did that job. 16 years ago. Yeah, things change. Absolutely. Your learning curves. Absolutely. The compliance and all this. But you know. What they taught me back then is whoever gets on my ride, my truck that day, even if I've done that ride 100 times that day, even if I'm going to know it 16 years later, it's their first experience. And I got to give my best for that. So they walk away with the same experience that I gave that first person, and the second person, and the third person. It's not about me getting worn down and tired out because I've done it over and over, and I've left this message again for this person, and I left 5 for this person. Those are all individuals. You got to do your best for each individual, and that's hard. It becomes repetitive in anything that we do. Absolutely. But it's the end result. Figuring out the end result. Figuring out when you see a veteran get that job. When you maybe envision them going home. I get to go home. I get to support my family. I have a wife. I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. And I love them. I'm thankful that I get to work still. That's all I've ever known. I work. Insurance. I worked crazy jobs. I worked at Walt Disney World. I worked at Hooks Drug Stores. I did a lot of silly things, but I worked. I became a veteran during that process because I got a job in the Marine Corps that I loved. I was very honored to do. But I didn't want to quit working just because life had changed, just because I became a veteran. That still instilled in me, and the Marine Corps instilled it even more in me, that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to go out there and change. You guys are making a difference in those veterans' roles. Yeah, that's why you see me get emotional. That's why it's very personal for me. Because I've seen guys that get lost when they come home. I've seen them. It's hard. But when you reach out, when you make one more phone call, when you just look at it from their perspective for a second, say, you know what? Those 17 and 18-year-old kids that I doubted were 17 and 18 when they went over there. Did, you know what? 4 or 5 tours and come back, get out of the Marine Corps, get out of the Army, Navy at 22 years old. They're a 22-year-old kid So yeah, they're not the greatest sometimes at calling people back. Absolutely. I'm 38 years old. I'm not the greatest at calling people back. Sometimes that's just part of it. Yeah, it doesn't make me a bad employee. It just makes me, you know what, sometimes hard to get a hold of. Makes a little extra effort. Those guys, usually at that age, a lot of the guys that went over, they had families. Absolutely. When they get home, they get married, they have kids, they still don't maybe have that college education. But I can tell you right now what they did, the responsibility that they had was far more than any experience I ever had in college. Far more responsibility, far more dedication, far more looking out for somebody. All the things that an employer would just give anything to have in someone is what these veterans had. And it's how do we find these? Thinking outside the box, looking from a new perspective. If you are a veteran, you know, I know there's a lot of veterans in this room. Absolutely. And you have to think, if I didn't have this job, what would I do? You'd probably call somebody in this room. Because you know these people in this room. Who do you call if you don't know somebody in this room? Who do you know if you're a 22-year-old that just got done, has been living in another state, has done 4 tours, and comes back to Virginia? Who do they call? How do they find out? Where's the biggest population of veterans right now? Where? State of Virginia. Mostly. Absolutely. Now, where do most of those veterans work? Should we know that? I'm not going to lie. I speak at a lot of places. This room should know that. Right? Out of all the rooms I talk to, I'm pretty sure this room should know. But also, if we had to look for veterans, most of them, we had the biggest population of veterans are probably in the military, right? Yeah. Do we ever make contact that early with them?
Oh, yeah.
I know you do. Absolutely. That's where you get. Because once they get out, sometimes they get lost. We have programs out there. And I know some people in this room, different organizations, are done different levels of that. And in different stages in that, are on the back end of that. But you know what? We got to think sometimes, where these people are. Where am I? I'm a 22-year-old and I got 2 kids at home and I need a job as soon as possible. Just put yourselves in their shoes for a minute. Look for a job. Get on and say, I'm going to find a job. This is what I'm going to do. That's the perspective. You know your job. Absolutely. How can you become better at your job? By helping the people and figuring out how they see it. And figuring out how you need to target those people. Where you need to find those people. Where would they go? And then go from there. The guys that go back to school. How do we get them? How do we help them out? Sometimes, a lot of times, it's just paperwork that makes it craziness. When I got hurt, I had a wonderful thing. I had a lot of support. But I was almost overwhelmed with people trying to help at some point. And I know that that's a good, positive thing. But when you're trying to sort things out, you don't know who's trying to help, who's trying to do this, you don't know agendas, and so it becomes difficult sometimes. And it's not because they don't want to call you back, it's because they've been over-indicted and they're trying to support 2 kids and a wife, and life is busy. Your life is busy. But it's how you keep doing it that's making the difference. It's the veterans that you can see when you get them that job. When they come home and they get to kiss their wife, or the wife gets to kiss their husband, and those men and women are out there back in the workforce here in Virginia, helping so many, making a difference, working, doing what they want to do. That's the end result. That's the thank you I come to say. Because thank you is such an important thing. I went back to Landstuhl, Germany a year ago. It was October 15th of last year. I went back to the hospital where I went through. It was me, 6 other Marines, and a Navy medic that had all been injured, had all gone through Landstuhl. We went there to say thank you. We went there to say thank you to the doctors, the nurses, the Fisher House, anybody that had been involved. Because they made a difference. We said thank you to the helicopter pilots. Because we wanted to show them that they had seen the worst. And just pushed us through and got us saved. We wanted to see them where we had come from, where we had went, who had become because they had saved us. We talked to the helicopter pilots, and I sat there on October 15th, 8 years to the date of my injury, sitting there talking to these guys. And I remember just sitting across from some of the medics and doctors that are on these helicopters that fly in to get us out. They're called dust off. These guys go in. It's amazing. One of my Marines came over, Herman, and he asked Captain, he said, Captain, he said, do you know who was in Afghanistan? He named a certain time, location, province. He said, yeah, Captain John had been with him for a long time. He's like, yeah. He's like, I know exactly who was there. He's like, I can look it up to double check, but yeah, I know who was there. He said, Herman looked at him and said, can you tell those guys thanks? Captain said, absolutely I will. And then Herman just nonchalantly turned to walk away. And Captain said, I don't mind asking Marine. He said, I don't mind telling him. I'll email him. I'll find out for sure who it is. I'll email those guys tonight to tell them things. But can I tell him what? He said, yeah. He said, we're over there. He said, we had taken some small arms fire. We were in vehicles and we dismounted. So we got out of our vehicles and we took over a small shelter. And we had taken that in. And he said, me and my best friend were outward security. So we're on the outside doing perimeter sweeps. He said, during that time, we had walked around that house 19 times. Just doing sweeps. Hadn't had anybody get seriously hurt or anything. He said, finally the guys came out, loaded back up. He said, we're the last two. He said, my buddy said, let me do one more sweep. He said, on that 20th time that he walked around the house on the exact same path, he tripped a mine. So it pretty much cut him in half. He said, I didn't know what to do. Herman just said, I just laid on him, just trying to stop the bleeding. He said, we called you guys in. He said, I remember you guys flying in and you got him and we put him on that helicopter and I watched you fly away just thinking that's the last time I'd ever see him. He said, you tell those guys thanks because he made it. He survived. So his life is different, but he is happy. He is good. And I just sat there like a big baby, just welling up watching this story. It was unreal. But I saw the power of thanks. Now, Herman could have easily, nonchalantly just said, tell those guys thanks and walked on. But when he told the explanation, it became a lot more powerful. Well, I'm telling you the explanation. I'm here because I have a job. You don't always get to see the end result of your efforts. I'm the end result. I get to go home with my family. I get to do, it takes a lot more stress away. I get to have wonderful things because your end results, because you get these veterans jobs that are struggling sometimes, but are doing good, that are just, don't maybe not know the right path, how to get to where they want to be. Sometimes 18 and 19-year-olds, at 18-year-old, I thought I wanted to be an engineer. At 19 years old, I wanted to be a speech pathologist. At 22 years old, I was working at an insurance company. We don't always know at that age what we want to do for the rest of our lives. Sometimes you have to handhold these guys and gals. Sometimes you have to get them. Sometimes you do find this outstanding ones, but it's about doing it. It's about doing your job and helping them, because then the end result happens. And I'm telling you, thank you for the end result. Because it's why I get to smile every single morning. It's why I love my life. It's about using your attitude, influence Virginia, influence the veterans of this community. And show them that you're going to be there with that smile, that you're going to treat them special. Because people knows that even the people you work with, even the people in this room, there's a vast resources here in this room. Use it. Use those emotions that, yeah, we all get stressed out. We all have a lot on our plate. We all have families outside of this. Absolutely. But it's still the end result, getting those veterans jobs. Doing it 100%. I was nervous the first time I went to public in my legs, but I was excited. I was still at Walter Reed, and we were going to Silver Springs, Maryland. We were going to a steakhouse that we had been to many times, my girlfriend, my now wife, and I. We were going there because I was going to show the people that I was walking. I was always in my wheelchair, and I knew the chefs, I knew the hostess, I knew everybody there, because we ate there a lot. We loved that place. So when the day came to try it, that's where I wanted to go for my first outing. I remember my wife was there, and I put my legs on, and I walked with 2 canes at the time. I was very excited. And I remember getting to the restaurant, and I could see the glass doors, and I could see the manager standing inside, and I was already excited. And my wife opened the door for me, and I walked in the door, and about my 3rd step in the door, I caught my foot on one of the mats. I fell. And I could feel the embarrassment. I could feel my face just red and hot, and I slowly pushed myself up. I gathered myself, dusted myself off, and I looked over at my girlfriend, my wife, and I said, let's go. Let's get out of here. She said, no, we're already here. Let's go ahead and eat. I didn't want to, but I said, all right, fine. I agreed to it. I sat down. I didn't say a word the entire meal. I ate as fast as possible. I knew I was being rude. And finally, I waited for her to finish, and I looked over and I said, can we go now? I'm done. She said, yeah, let's just get the bill. So I got the bill, and he gave it to me, and I opened it up. And someone had paid it for me. And I just thought to myself, there's a lot of restaurants around here I could easily fall. No, that's not the point of that story. I get confused easily. That's not the point of that story. I got it. I got the point now. So sorry about that. The point of that story is that somebody saw me fall in that restaurant. But they also saw me stand back up. That's what life's about. It's about standing back up. Sometimes we're that person that needs that helping hand to stand back up. I tell you what, a lot of times those veterans are the ones that just need that hand to stand back up. Just to get their feet back on the ground. Just to get going forward. You guys are those hands. That's why I'm so thankful for it. Because you're lifting so many veterans up. You're reaching out and you're getting them. You're like, we're going to be there for you. And that puts smiles on my face. That's a fabulous thing to have a room full of people that you know you're changing this world. That's awesome. Enjoy what you do. Be comfortable with what you do. Absolutely find a passion. Reignite that fire of why you do what you do. Because that's what's important. I find a fire every time I speak. But this, obviously, emotional to me. A lot of times, I'll go to different places. And I'm comfortable with this. I wear shorts all year round. They don't get cold, so it's awesome. But I'll sometimes, meet with people the night before in the hotel. And they'll walk up to me. And I'm always goofy and stuff, and they'll introduce themselves and say, "Are you Josh?" I say, "Yeah, we'll talk for a little bit." And I know it's coming finally because they'll start getting a little, I can tell the look of what they're about to see because they'll make notice of the cold shirt or something. And they'll finally say, "You know what? I recognize you because of that cold shirt." There is nothing else giving away who I am. Like, I know I stick out. Absolutely, like I said, I wear shorts all the time. It's about being okay with that. It's about finding the humor. It's about finding the good, about the excitement of the daily stuff that we do. It's about looking outside, sometimes getting a new perspective. And even when we know for certain that circle is going clockwise. For a second, say, what if it's not? For a second, say, let me put myself in the people that I'm trying to service's shoes. Let me just try for a second something new. Think outside the box. Maybe I'm not comfortable with it. You know what? Maybe I reach out. Maybe I reach out to one of these fabulous people in this room that have had the exact same emotions, and I tell them I'm stuck. And I need help. It's not bad. You know what usually helps? What happens when you do that, when you reach out and say, I'm stuck, I need help? Somebody helps, and you get past that. Usually when we say, I'm stuck, and I don't want to tell anybody I'm stuck, you know what happens? You stay stuck. Reach out to the people in the room. Reach out to this commission. That's what it's here for. That's why you do. You get that end result of getting somebody a job. So I get to travel across this country because I have a job. Because someone took a chance on me. Someone said, you know what? I'm going to give you a chance. And now I do this. I do it all the time. And I love it. And I'm happy. My family's happy. I'm supported. This is good. Like I'm good. End result. Every day. Remember, that's where it gets you. That end result is that just smile of that beaming veteran that you reached out to. You continue to push. You continue to hold. October 15th of 2006. It's my worst day. I lost two of my best friends. I lost both of my legs. And I almost gave up. But other people didn't. That's why I'm here. You're those other people for so many veterans that may have almost given up on themselves. When you get them through those bad days, it's when those good days happen. It's when they continue on into life. They get to work and they get to see how beautiful this country that they fought for is. That's what life's about. It's about enjoying. It's about having fun. It's about those relationships in this room. Always know that relationships are important. The relationships you have with veterans, but also the relationships you have with other people. I happen to be traveling back from Colorado. This is almost 7 years ago. I was flying next to an older gentleman, just a nervous flyer, and I could tell he was nervous. He kept looking around. And finally, after a little bit, I could tell it was coming. He looked over and saw my legs. He leaned in close to me and said, son, was that a war injury? And I just looked up and I said, no, it was a plane crash. I don't know what's wrong with my dad. I thought it was hilarious. He did not think that was funny. I retracted the statement and said, sir, I don't know why that came out. That was a war injury. We ended up talking all the way home. Great guy. He's actually from my hometown, which made it even harder. But we talked about our families, our children, what we did for a living. You know what? Usually when you talk to somebody new, what do you tell them about? Your family, what you do for a living, or your father. Probably the three most important things you tell other people. When you talk to your family, what are you doing still? You guys deal with one of the 3 most important things in somebody's life. You know what? That one affects the other 2. Pretty much the time. That's awesome. Just know that you're making a difference. Know, find that fire, that championships, when you see that end result, when you get to see later. You may not even see, you may need to see somebody just walking down the road that you affected one time, and you'll see that smile on their face. Know that you had a part of that. Like I said, I went back to launch to say thank you to people that had a part of this. I'm here today to say thank you to you that had a part of this as well. Because of where I am, because of where our veterans are, because where they'll continue to go is in this room. Keep doing it, find the fire, but enjoy it. Have fun, and I wish you and your families, but your jobs, the best in this life. Thanks, guys. You guys got it.